We would be lying if we said we weren't aware of how obsessed the world is about beauty and femininity and appearance. And I think a lot of people give Korea or South Korea or Asian beauty standards a lot of slag for being very upfront about their beauty standards and being very aggressively enforcing those beauty standards on people. But having lived in Asia for most of my life and now living in a Western country, there are beauty like standards everywhere, and there are, you know, expectations everywhere. Even here in the UK, living in London, I can see that maybe the beauty standard is far different to what is in South Korea, but there is still a certain look or a certain type of person that is considered beautiful. I think the fact that people in South Korea are more open and blatant about it actually gives them a little bit of more credit, not credit, but a little bit more, I guess, authenticity in terms of like at least they're freaking honest about what they expect to see and how horrible they feel about themselves and how much people want to change because of societal pressures. Everywhere else, people are equally miserable. I mean, yes, the whole plastic surgery part is slightly like more, I guess, more of an issue there. But in terms of how much pressure there is on women to look a certain way or feel a certain way, that's there everywhere. And we cannot isolate it as an issue with just Korea or with Asia. So this book that I'm going to talk about, although I gave it a 3 stars and it wasn't really anything incredible, I wanted to talk about this book for the context of beauty standards and femininity, and hence the little different setup and the lighting, because I wanted to make this, I mean, it looks like I'm about to film an OnlyFans video, but that was not the point. I just wanted to make a really cool setting for this video. It's called If I Had Your Name by Frances Cha. I don't have the physical book because I read it as an audiobook, but this was about 4, I think, girls who lived in South Korea together in an apartment, and I don't think all of them lived together. I think 3 of them lived together, but anyways, I wasn't really following the plot all that much. I was more trying to understand the dialogue and the context and everything. It was not very well written, I have to say. I'm really sorry, Frances Cha. I'm not the type of reviewer who usually slags people off so early in the video, but I do have some really good pointers to say, so you know, if you're watching this, stay here. For everyone else, don't dismiss the book. If you've ever watched the TV show Hello My 20s or Record of Youth, this is very similar to that in terms of setting, where you follow a group of women, a young 20s. They're all facing issues of early adulthood, but in a more dark way than how it was portrayed in Hello My 20s or any kind of Korean drama. One of them is a like an escort girl. I don't know what word they actually used it. They used the word in the book, I forgot what it is, but she basically serves tea, gives people company, gives men company. It's like a companion. What was it called? They had a word for those places, and apparently there's so many where men just come and you pour them drinks, and you make sure they have like a company during drinking and all of that. There's another girl who's mute and who's a hairstylist. There's another girl who's an artist who is in a relationship with a chaebol, and if you don't know what a chaebol is, it's like a rich kid with parents who own usually a conglomerate, like a rich brat basically. or like the Western equivalent would be a rich brat. And then the 4th girl, I believe she was the person who lived below them in another apartment, who had like issues with getting pregnant, but she was finally had conceived, and now she was on odds about how she feels, like, is this child even going to survive? But she also observes kind of like a 4th dimension into this 4th dimension, kind of like a 4th viewpoint of the story, where she kind of observes these 3 girls who live above her, and she tries to kind of draw parallels between her life and their life and how she could have also ended up in that position, yada yada yada. Anyways, the 2 girls who live upstairs are very close to each other. They kind of support each other through like different struggles that they have, whereas the girl who works as an escort is very obsessed with kind of changing her face and the way she looks. The girl who is like an artist doesn't really care. She's in a relationship where she feels very like comfortable, and then the girl who's a hairstylist is also not someone who cares much about her appearance, but she does always comment or narrate, like her point of view is always talked about in a very like she always observes people, and the way she observes people almost puts her across as someone who's constantly judging people. As the name of the book suggests, If I Had Your Face is very, it's a really beautiful, I think, title, because it describes what the book is perfectly. A lot of women, yes, they do think, if I had that face, maybe my life would be different. And I think it's very hard hitting, the name of the book, but it's done very beautifully. If I had your face, maybe my life would be different. If I had your face, maybe I would be happier. If I had your face, maybe my life would be like, you know, just, if I would have all the things that I ever wanted if I only had your face. And that's what the whole book is about. I think there are so many things that were so distracting, like the main guy, or like the only male character that had like a lot of book time or reader time, was called Hyun Bin. I swear Hyun Bin is a stage name. Why is this guy called Hyun Bin, or is this like an actual Korean name? I'm not convinced. And then the whole part about like the girl working, like one of the, Ara, the hairstylist, is like obsessed with like the K-pop bands and K-pop in general, but she tries to kind of hide it. But at the same time, she's like obsessed with this one guy who she really wants to meet. And at some point, she ends up meeting him. And I'm just like, does this actually happen? This never happens. Like, and meeting him in the most like scandalous way possible. Like, and nothing. I don't know. I just feel like some plots were developed really well, and the idea was there, but they just weren't fleshed out properly, which is what frustrated me about this book. But there were so many other things that weren't done well. Like these girls, we got to hear about their past and their upbringing, but not their relationship with their parents or the interpersonal relationships were only like very superficially touched upon. There is a lot of dwelling into their past and the type of upbringing they had, but I think early childhood and the interpersonal relationships that they had during this period could have been more fleshed out, and maybe would have given us more context on why they feel the way they feel. At least for Ara, I feel that hairstylist, her story was very well done and the most fleshed out. And the other two, because their lives were always so closely tied together, I guess we were supposed to kind of decipher or break apart or interpret their lives as being somewhat similar and under similar circumstances. But I don't think that's the case. I think for a book that had only 3 to 4 main characters, they could have put more effort, and you do switch from one person narrating to the other through different chapters. There was definitely an opportunity to go way further into some of the stories, especially the one with the artist, and when she finds out that her boyfriend that she thinks is very, very like, you know, into it, she feels very guilty about being in this relationship for a certain reason. But her story is very much just about her and this boy, and she's an artist. I would have loved to know more. There's just not a lot about her passions, not a lot about her art. That part was missing. Sometimes some of the characters felt very one-dimensional, and that probably took away from the story, but what the book was trying to portray definitely came through. The story was there, the thought was there, the storytelling was there, but it was just like too short. Maybe could have been fleshed out more. I did feel like by the time I got like in deep into the book, I was already like 70% into the book. First 30% I kind of like and then I got into the book and the book was over. So maybe it could have been longer, maybe some of the stories could have been fleshed out, but the overarching message was there. I not too long ago did a review on a Korean drama called My ID is Gangnam Beauty, and I think that show probably took the same concept or the same idea of the whole beauty standards and plastic surgery and young adulthood and kind of expectations on young people. They took all of that and portrayed it in such a beautiful way, especially with the whole play with perfumes and smell and all of that. I didn't see, like, because it's a book and sometimes I just expect more depth from books than from TV shows, that just was a throw off. But overall, I think I would give this a 3 out of 5 stars, simply because of the concept that was explored. And I think this is still a very sensitive, very touchy subject to kind of talk about, or because it's very recent and it's current and it's happening right now, and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. So I understand why the author might have been tiptoeing around certain topics rather than just kind of wholly just going for it. But at the same time, that is no reason for me to not be a little bit critical about it. Now that the book is out of the way, I want to talk about the topic of beauty standards and plastic surgery a little bit more generally, because I think like this is something that maybe the book has given me a reason to talk about, and something that I want to talk about anyway. Growing up, like back home, I was always had a lot of comments about my appearance. My nose was always too upturned, so I had like a piggy look. I always had like a big round moon face that was made very prominent. I also got fairly chubby multiple points in my life, and then I lost weight. And then I also was very dark when I was in school because I was constantly in the sun, and in India you get sunburn. So there have been multiple comments about my appearance different points in my life that made me very self-conscious. And it was not until I moved here, and even here, and sometimes people talk about like my skin color or different things that makes me feel conscious. But more than not, I am not all that conscious about these little things. Obviously, sometimes I feel prettier than others, some days I feel prettier than others, and that confidence fluctuates day to day. It's not always that I feel super confident in how I look, and sometimes I do feel cute, you know. I do see how if you're constantly being told, or if people are constantly telling you things about your appearance, or you keep hearing about certain things about yourself, you almost start believing that there is certain work to be done. The book did one good thing where they talked about like the girl went for one surgery and the doctor recommended 10 others, and then she ended up getting them, and then the procedure of like recovery is so painful and so heartbreaking. I think those things were touched upon really well, because nobody really tells you like that is an industry. People are trying to make money. If a doctor says, oh yeah, your nose could definitely use some work, but I think if you did this to your lips, it would suit your new nose a lot better. And that is something that actually happens a lot. People go for, and when they go there, they're already insecure about how they look. Obviously, if a person is coming to change the way they look, they probably have some sort of insecurity, and to play that insecurity against someone and suggest that there are more things wrong with them than they're aware of is just a different kind of messed up. And even as growing like up, to be told by my family members or people who I believe wanted the best for me that maybe I am a too dark, or too this or too that, or too hairy, or too whatever it is, it's just so normalized in certain societies, which I don't understand why it is, because it shouldn't be. My culture, Asmi's culture, when we go and we see people for the first time in a long time, not the first time, but like if I go home now and I see people after a long time, it's very normal to say like, oh, শকত হৈ গৈছা, oh, ক্ষীণাইছা, and it's like, oh, you lost weight or you gained weight, oh, দেখিবলৈ ইমান ধুনীয়া হৈ গৈছে. It's like, yo, you became so pretty now. It's like, oh, what was I ugly? What are you trying to say? It pisses me off definitely. Back then when I lived there all the time, I did not pick up on these things, but I'm like, why are like topics of conversation like how fat someone's got, how skinny someone's got, how pretty someone's got, like the first things you mention about people? Or like, it's just appearance seems to be such a big factor of like almost like saying, hey, how have you been? It's like a greeting. Commenting on someone's appearance is a form of greeting, and that is very messed up and shouldn't be the case. But I don't think anyone can change it apart from ourselves and actually do something about it. Maybe not normalize it so much. But yeah, I don't know why I went on that little side curd there, but I do think that the topics or the things that the author talked about here were really important, and I think some of them could be done better, but even then, this is a really good place to start, and this is a really good place to kind of encourage people to begin the conversation around with these unrealistic beauty standards and in general augmented human beings. But yeah, hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you enjoyed today's set. I will be back with more book videos soon. Subscribe. See you later.